Welcome back to the Three-Handed Bandits channel. It's Nathan back with another video for you today, and today we're going to be going through our power rankings because the NFL season is days, merely hours away from starting. I am so excited. So let's go ahead and just break down our power rankings before the season starts, starting with our bottom tier, the Cellar Dwellers, the teams that I think are going to be absolutely terrible. And the 32nd team should be no surprise. It's the New England Patriots. You got Gerard Mayo replacing the legendary Bill Belichick. Even though you do have a lot of defensive continuity, you got Barmore's injured, you said goodbye to Judon, so who knows what this defense is going to look like. And then on the offensive side, some of the worst playmakers in the league, one of the worst offensive lines in the league, not a good combo. So the entire goal is let's keep Drake May protected, make sure he doesn't develop any bad habits, and let Jacoby Brissett eat shit for us for a while. Number 31, the Washington Commanders. Look, here's the thing about the Commanders. Their offseason was probably the worst in the NFL. You couldn't get Ben Johnson, probably because they wanted to draft Jaden Daniels, so instead you get Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know how I like that pairing to establish with a young rookie quarterback who, like, let's face it, doesn't have the upside of like a Drake May or even a Caleb Williams. So I think they drafted the wrong guy, brought in the wrong people, and then you look at this defense, it's going to be hard for Dan Quinn to have a great defense when you pair one of the worst secondaries in the league with a horrible edge rush. I don't know how much he's going to be able to scheme up. Like, you can only polish a turd so much. So let's see what goes on in this defense, but I'm worried for it. Tennessee Titans, they bring in Bill Callahan and his father, Brian Callahan. I think I actually said that backwards, but that's not important. This offensive line hopefully will get better, but I just don't know if it's going to get better in year one. I do think they're still missing some pieces. I do like the Lloyd Cushenberry addition at least. And I believe in Will Levis. If this team does overperform, I do believe it's going to be because of Callahan and Levis and their connection. Defensively, though, I'm worried. Denard Wilson was only with the Ravens for a year, and now he's probably going to bring this scheme over. Let's see how it goes. I think the front seven is weak outside of Jeffrey Simmons. And then pair that with L'Jarius Sneed, who I think the Chiefs didn't pay for a reason. Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, two aging safeties. I think this defense could low-key get gashed. So let's see what this Titans team is going to look like in the post-Mike Vrabel era. 29, the Minnesota Vikings. Frankly, we can probably drop them just a little bit, but honestly, I just really like Kevin O'Connell, and then Brian Flores as a defensive coordinator, I think does a good job of getting lesser players to overperform. So even with Sam Darnold, I still think this team, like if you have Justin Jefferson, your offense is still going to be at least not horrible. And then defensively, I think Brian Flores is going to find a way to, keep the ship going. So am I expecting playoffs or anything great from the Vikings? No. But when you have Sam Darnold as your quarterback, you don't have those expectations. So who knows? Kevin O'Connell and this team could really overperform and get in and around the playoff picture, but I cannot imagine this team going on any sort of deep run in any way whatsoever. And the last team of this tier, number 28, the New York Giants. Look, listen, I want to put them higher. I really do, but you kind of just can't. I think Daniel Jones is a underrated quarterback, and I think Brian Daboll is actually a great gem, a stud head coach, and hopefully they will be able to overperform this ranking. Their offensive line was so bad last year, and that is what held them back. But they'll have a full, hopefully, season from Andrew Thomas to bring in John Runyon. They got Greg Van Roten, who's currently listed as a backup, but performed very well last year. And Jermaine Illuminor, you pair that with Carmen Basilio, one of the most respected offensive line coaches in the NFL, coming over from the Raiders, where Jermaine Illuminor and Greg Van Roten wore when they played very well the last couple of years. Look, I think there is potential for this team to actually do very well. Pair adding Brian Burns to Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence on this defensive line, I think is going to only help a young secondary. So if Shane Bowen can get the defensive side going, I trust Brian Daboll to get a hopefully better offensive line and better offense in return. So if any of these five teams, if I had to predict one to way overperform and make the playoffs, it is the New York Giants. I know it's a hot take. Daniel Jones, top 20 quarterback. Do not at me. And now as we tier up, we're going from the Cellar Dwellers to the teams I think are kind of just existing, where they're in this kind of limbo space where they're not horrible, but I don't really think they're going to be competing for the playoffs. And let's starting off with Antonio Pierce's Las Vegas Raiders. You can coach hard, and you can really get these guys to rah-rah, and, you can really try to fire these guys up, but at some point, you just need talent, and I don't know if they have the talent. I do not like Luke Getsy as an offensive coordinator. And Gardner Minshew, he is one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the league, but he's probably one of the bottom 5 of those top 32. So How is this offense going to look? I think it'll be okay. I think the defense will perform valiantly. I like the Christian Wilkins signing, but I think once you start pairing some losses, I think the luster and the culture that Pierce is building might tend to crack and fade. So I'm worried about the long term towards the end of the season, how this is going to go. But at least in the meantime, Gardner Minshew and Antonio Pierce, it is a fun story. I mean, you got one of the best defensive players in the league with Max Crosby on the other side of the ball. Like, all it does is lift all the boats. Number 26, though, the Denver Broncos, division rival. Look, I'm not going to lie. I think Bo Nix can play. I think he's going to be a lot better than people are going to want to give him credit for. He almost seems like just a slightly faster version of Drew Brees. And I don't know if you recall what Sean Payton did with Drew Brees, but he won a Super Bowl. So is he going to be able to go against Mahomes head-to-head and win there? Maybe not, but I still think that they're going to have an underrated season. I think the defense is going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be near elite, but hopefully this offense will be pretty solid, and that will kind of help them balance out to 7-ish wins. I think is the goal here with rookie Bo Nix. Number 25, the Atlanta Falcons. Look, I have a full breakdown. If you want to hear my full opinions, go check that out. But I think this team has spelt a recipe for disaster. It is right there in front of us, and when it happens, come back to this video and be like, you know what, Nathan, you are a genius. Number 24, the Seattle Seahawks. I think Geno Smith is starting to struggle since losing Dave Canales. I think his Lancinity run is somewhat over. Obviously, he's still like a top 20, still a good quarterback, but not the near MVP elite level he was when he first broke out. Pair that with one of the worst offensive lines in the league, a little scary, and then a defense which I think is going to start a little bit slower. A lot of these defensive-minded head coaches usually takes about a season and a half just about before you really see that defensive structure and that great defense seeping through. So I think year one, there could be some hiccups, could be some warts, but heading into year two with the McDonald reign, I do think they will be much better. But in the meantime, I think they're kind of just going to get by this season. Number 23, the Indianapolis Colts. I love Shane Steichen, but when he paired Gus Bradley and just an average defense with an offense, which, who knows what it's going to be. The offensive line is good, and I do like how they bring in Adonai Mitchell to help out the playmakers, and then a full season of Jonathan Taylor should only help. But Anthony Richardson is such a wild card, I just don't really know what to expect. They could honestly win this division, or they could be like a top 5 drafting team. I really don't know. I think their target is probably around 7 to 8 wins, as personally what I'm expecting. But frankly, this team might have one of the highest upsides and one of the lowest downsides of really any team in the NFL this year. Number 22, the New Orleans Saints. I think people are being too harsh on the Saints and Derek Carr. I think they hyped him up way too much last year, but now that hype has gone way too far the opposite direction. Derek Carr is still a good quarterback. He may be like the 16th best quarterback, but he's still a good quarterback. And you pair that with a defense that is sound against the run, plays hard, is well coached. That's a recipe to be a good, solid team. Are they going to be like a playoff threatening team, a Super Bowl contending team? Maybe not necessarily, but I don't think they're going to be some bottom 5 team. Is Dennis Allen on the hot seat? Yes. Is he going to be the coach of this team next year? Who knows? But unless Derek Carr gets injured, I don't think this team is going to absolutely bottom out and be horrible. And now we head into the next tier of the in the hunt, kind of all the average teams in the league who are going to be kind of vying for, be right around the wild card and final playoff spots in the respective divisions. And then number 21, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the division winners, which I correctly predicted last year. I told you so. Baker Mayfield is that guy. But I think Dave Canales is that guy too, and losing him I think is going to hurt. Todd Bowles has always had a good, well-coached defense, but not quite as elite since he took over as the full-time head coach. So I do think we might see a slight regression from Baker Mayfield. Not like a horrible, but I still don't think he's going to quite be as good as he was last year. So take a step back from Baker and a defense who is just starting to get more and more holes. There's definitely a recipe for this Buccaneers team to kind of struggle just a little bit more, and I don't think they're going to be the team that wins this division. Next up, the Arizona Cardinals. Look, Kyler Murray is that dude, underrated, top 10 quarterback. Give him a wide receiver 1, Trey McBride. Give him James Conner. He's really good weapons here. An offensive line that should hopefully get better, and a defense that just needs more talent but performed valiantly with Jonathan Gannon. I think there's a recipe for this team to actually make the playoffs, actually be like the 7 seed. People are not giving the Cardinals enough respect. I get why people are fading them, but Kyler Murray is one of the most underrated players in the league, and I think there is a better chance that the Cardinals make the playoffs than have a top 5 pick. You heard it here first. Back the Cardinals. Especially in fantasy football, back the Cardinals. Number 19, the Chicago Bears. Look, I really like Caleb Williams, but rookie quarterbacks are still rookies. You know, they're going to have their moments. They're going to have their struggles. It's hard to see rookie quarterbacks making the playoffs. It really just does not happen as much as they really, really want it to. So I do want to temper expectations on the Bears a little bit. But I think this team is still going to be a lot better than what they were last year. We really saw this defense coming on strong for Matt Eberflus, especially once they got Montez Sweat. Like, this team really seemed like they were falling apart and things were going to explode in their face. But Eberflus steadied the ship, got this defense playing great, and then Caleb Williams should hopefully be an improvement from Justin Fields. Bring in Shane Waldron, bring in Keenan Allen. I do think that this team is frankly going to be better. But if I had to pick them as a division winner or to be a wild card team, I think they're going to be kind of just missing out on being in the playoffs in Caleb Williams' rookie year. And number 18, the winner of the NFC South, the Carolina Panthers. So many people are doubting this team. They're consensus for most people the worst team in the NFL, but I'm pushing back on that. You have Dave Canales, who's shown his ability to help Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield become better quarterbacks. Is only going to help Bryce Young. Oh, and the fact that they had the worst NFL or the worst offensive line in the NFL last year, and they went out and they got pieces to help protect. They really bought in and had a great offseason. They got Deontay Johnson to give another weapon for Bryce Young, an actual good weapon for Bryce Young. They brought in Jonathan Brooks to have another running back option for when he comes off of injury. But this offensive line is revamped. This defense is the thing I'm slightly worried about, but also I have so much faith in Ejiro Evero. I don't think he gets the respect he deserves as a defensive coordinator. And so I really do think this team is going to turn heads, shock people. People are going to see why Bryce Young was the first overall pick. You know, I think CJ Stroud is getting all the hype. Granted, he deserves it. But I think the situation that Bryce Young had compared to CJ Stroud really has soured people on Bryce Young unfairly, and so I think he's going to absolutely blow up this year, have a great year, and I think the Panthers are going to win the NFC South. At number 17, I have the Los Angeles Wolverines. Everyone knows what Jim Harbaugh is doing over here. He's basically recreating what's going on in Michigan, bringing it to LA. I do think the culture that he's going to bring is going to be such a change of pace, and from how bad it was under Brandon Staley. And it's going to be weird thinking of the Chargers as like a physical team when the last couple of years they've been one of the softest in the NFL. But you have Justin Herbert, who is a top 10 quarterback, and a defense that should play much harder. Even despite some of the weaker weapons, I do think that this team is going to be a very tough out. No one's going to want to play the Chargers. It's just going to kind of depend if they're able to make the plays necessary. In a loaded AFC, I do think they're going to kind of just be missing out. But in a year or two, like, they could theoretically really go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. I mean, we've been saying that for years now, but I think in the next season or two, it's a realistic possibility. Number 16, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, this rating might look really bad or really good. Last year, I went on a limb and said the Jaguars are way overrated, and guess what? I was right again. All the haters suck it. I don't think they got better. However, I think people were too high on them last year, and now as it balances out, I think people are too low on them. I will say I don't like Doug Peterson. I think his coaching and his coaching staff you've really seen lacks the attention to details is what I'm going for. You've seen it in Sirianni and some of the other disciples of him. These teams starting to fall apart. And last year you could start seeing some of the bad coaching seep its way through. And if you pair this team with a very difficult first half schedule, I do think there is an actual chance where the Jacksonville Jaguars are the first team to fire their head coach. I literally have put money on it that Doug Peterson is the first NFL head coach to get fired. However, if they're able to start the season off strong and steal a couple games and be around even, the back half of their schedule lightens up. And if you have Trevor Lawrence, who is like a fringe top 10 quarterback, and a defense that should be much better than what it is last year, there is a potential to be a good team. I still don't think that they're going to be able to win the AFC South. I still think it's between the Colts and the Texans. But I do think the Jaguars are also going to be in and around the playoff hunt. Number 15, the Cleveland Browns. Look, Kevin Stefanski, first of all, way overrated. Should not have been Coach of the Year last year. Like, he is 2 Coach of the Years now. How would... Should have been Shane Steichen or Kevin O'Connell or just about anyone freaking else. Overrated as hell. His offenses have just not been good enough. He's the one who chose to pay $200 million to a fucking predator. Why are we just listening? It makes me angry. But look, this defense is elite. This defense is insane. But if you have an offensive-minded head coach and the defense is the better side of the ball, what the hell is Kevin doing? Oh, don't even get me started. Regardless, this defense is so dominant. As long as Myles Garrett stays healthy, he's single-handedly good enough to really keep this team in the playoff hunt. It really just depends on what we're going to get on the offensive side of the ball. I think there's a disconnect between Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski, and I just don't know if he's good enough to actually get them into playoffs. But when you have a defense as good as this one, you're going to be at least in the picture. And speaking of having questionable quarterback play and elite defenses, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know if you have looked at their opening schedule, but there's a chance where the Steelers could start off the year like close to like 7 or 8 wins by the time they're on their bye week. So like if you wonder how the Steelers keep finding a way to go 500, it's because they just consistently play great defense, play hard, and do enough on the offensive side of the ball. And with Russell Wilson, who is a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett, pair getting rid of Matt Canada and having Arthur Smith, and pair a defense that should still be as elite as always, I think the Steelers are going to turn some heads. But let me walk you through their schedule real quick. So they open at Atlanta, at Denver. I do think those are 2 games that they should win. Then they come home to play the Chargers. Have to go on the road to Indy. Like, I think they could win all of those. At home against Dallas, I think that's a trap game for Dallas. Then they have to go to the Raiders, or a better version of the Raiders. Play the Jets at home. Think that could be a tough game. And then they play the Giants at home. So, like, there is a real chance where this team might be, like, damn near, like, 6-2 heading into the bye week. And then they come back off the bye week and have to go to Washington. So they should be at 7 wins right there. The back half of their schedule, though, is really difficult. Baltimore, at Cleveland, at Cincinnati, Cleveland again, at Philly, at Baltimore, KC, and Cincinnati. But the Steelers have constantly proven that they find a way to steal games and win games that they shouldn't. So if they're already at 7 wins by week 10, I think they're going to be able to find a way to steal at least 2 of these, especially with how many of them are division games. So give me the Steelers. Honestly, I think they could be a playoff team again. No one is giving them that credit, but the Pittsburgh Steelers are a damn great organization. And Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL, end of sentence. Moving up into the next tier, we got the teams who should be playoff locks, should be in the playoffs, should be playing January football. And we'll start off with the Miami Dolphins. We're going to see what this defense is going to look like, kind of bringing in kind of how the Baltimore, the New Wave Ravens scheme has been. But frankly, this entire team comes down to Tua. Last year, they were such a shock, and like the way all the motion and everything with Tyreek Hill really caught teams off guard. But when teams kind of figured out how to slow that down, Tua started struggling, and this team finished the season very poorly. Hopefully, they've learned other counterpunches and other ways to have this offense work, have other things to rely on. So that way, hopefully, you're not expecting Tua to carry the load, because he's proven that he cannot. But I do have the utmost faith and respect in Mike McDaniel, so I believe in him to help elevate this team, and hopefully Tua just doesn't get in the way. Number 12, the LA Rams. Last year, they didn't have expectations. Makes it a lot easier to overperform when the expectations are low, but now this year they are losing Aaron Donald, one of, if not the greatest players in NFL history. Big shoes to fill. It's going to be hard to see what they're going to do on that defensive side and how they're going to perform. But when you have Sean McVay, who in my opinion, second best head coach in the league, I think that is a recipe for a great offense, especially when you still have Stafford. You'll hopefully have a healthy season between Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And they got Kyron Williams, who was a great player last year, and this team ran the ball so damn well. So I think the offense should be great. It just really depends on how this defense is going to look, especially when you have expectations again this year. That's where we start getting a little worried. But I still think they should be, no doubt, hopefully, to make the playoffs. And at number 11, we have the Dallas Fraud Boys. Look, fuck Mike McCarthy. Get him out of here. Get rid of Mike Zimmer while you're at it. This coaching staff would have been great in 2017, but times change and they are living in the past. This is going to be the most oldest, backwards-thinking organization in the team. However, Jerry Jones does not get the credit for how talented of a roster he has been able to put together. Dak Prescott has played very, very well, especially last year. But outside of CeeDee Lamb, what is this offense really going to rely on? And the defense, how are they going to look without Dan Quinn and all the schemes and stunts he was able to pull for this team last year? When you have Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb on either side of the ball, like, you're going to be a good team. It's just, let's find how Mike McCarthy is going to get this team to the playoffs and shit the bed. It's really kind of where we're at with the Dallas Cowboys. And at number 10, it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Look, this team is losing a lot of pieces. Morgan Moses and Kevin Zeitler on the offensive line, for example. Then you got Geno Stone on the defense. Oh, and Mike McDonald, who was like the number one head coaching hire basically in this last cycle. So I think this team is really due for aggression. You already saw what happens when you have Lamar, kind of in a situation where you need him to really win you games. He's going to shit the bed. I just don't think this team, even when last year was kind of their this is their year moment, still wasn't enough. And with how many pieces they're losing, I think they could struggle. Honestly, I think the gap between them and the other two teams in this division, like the Steelers and the Browns, is a lot closer than I think between the Ravens and the Chiefs, for example. I think they're in a very tight cluster in the AFC, but there's another team who obviously I think is a little bit better. And number 9, the Buffalo Bills. This won't be popular. Look, people are hating on the Bills. They are starting to fade the Bills, and I understand why. I get all the reasons, but Josh Allen is an elite quarterback. Not even just elite. He is the second best quarterback in the NFL. So regardless of what is happening, if you get a full season of Josh Allen, if you get a healthy season of Josh Allen, you are going to win games and you are going to be a good team. So unless you're predicting Josh Allen to get injured, put the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. When you have an elite quarterback, especially one that is Josh Allen, it's not a Lamar, not a Justin Herbert, not like a fake elite quarterback. When you have an actual elite quarterback, the second best quarterback in the league, you are going to be a good team and you are going to win games. Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, James Cook, they have enough talent here to have a productive offense. But when you have Josh Allen, you will win games and you will be a playoff team. But number 8, here's the other AFC North team I mentioned, the Cincinnati Bengals. Look, having a healthy season of Joe Burrow, obviously, it's going to help you be a much better team than they were last year. And even last year, they still finished at 9-8. So I think this team is going to do very well. I am worried about the loss of Callahan, their offensive coordinator. It's going to see how Zach Taylor kind of adapts to losing him, because I do think he might be slightly overrated. But they still have Lou Anarumo here, who I do think is a very great defensive coordinator who doesn't quite get the respect he deserves, and a team that still has a lot of talent. I think this team is poised to have a very good season. Whoa! San Francisco 49ers at 7? Yeah, damn right. Look, this team clearly has some sort of issues with Trent Williams, and they just signed Ayuk. Frankly, I think Kyle Shanahan is overrated. I'm going to say it. I think he's the third best head coach. I'd rather have McVay. I'd rather have Andy Reid, because they've shown they can actually fucking win something. But I do think that when everybody's healthy, this offense is so crazy. However, I think the issue is with Brock Purdy. He is a top 20 quarterback, but I don't think he has the ability to make plays like a Mahomes, like an Allen, like a Burrow even. He has probably the weakest arm in the NFL, and sometimes that just limits what this team can do. And you saw what happened in the Super Bowl is they just were not able to make enough plays against a really strong defense. Now, especially when you pair the pieces that they've kind of lost, they got Brandon Staley coaching for them on defense. I think this team has more holes than people are realizing. Oh, and especially without Trent Williams, isn't Brock Purdy like miserable in his career? So he might hold out. If he's not there, this offense is going to struggle. And then if you look at the rest of this offensive line, it is already horrible. If he's missing games or time, it's going to be even fucking worse. So I think the Niners are overrated. The hype has gone too far. People need to take a step back on them. And number 6, the Philadelphia Eagles. They have similar issues to the Niners. I think they have less holes on their roster, but I think the biggest issue for them is coaching. I think Sirianni has proved last year that he started losing respect and is not as good as a coach or as qualified as a coach as people initially thought. So I think the coaching of this team is going to hold them back. I do like how they brought in Vic Fangio. I think that'll help the defense perform better, but I'm not sold on Kellen Moore. But hopefully with a full season Jalen Hurts, that will kind of help you out. But offensive line, losing Jason Kelce is obviously going to hurt. So I do think they're the best team in the NFC East and one of the better teams in the NFC. I just can't fully picture them with Sirianni and with Jalen Hurts winning a Super Bowl, if that makes sense. But speak of the Super Bowl talk, let's just go ahead and get into the tier of the Super Bowl expectation teams, and we're starting off with the New York Jets. Give me a healthy Aaron Rodgers, and you're going to have a great fucking football team. I don't care if he's coming off an ACL. He still has one of the natural to strongest arms still at the age of 40. And he's probably the smartest quarterback. No, he is the smartest quarterback in the league, but might be one of the smartest of all time. So as long as the Jets can keep him upright, which I think they did a great job of bringing in like Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith, if they can keep him upright, they're going to have good offensive play. When you have Aaron Rodgers, you're just going to have offensive play. You're going to have a quarterback who just makes the right plays when needed. Like, look at the recipe that the Chiefs had last year. Great defense and a quarterback who can make the plays when needed. Exactly what the Jets are doing. So I think this is one last way for Aaron Rodgers to get a Super Bowl and ride off into retirement. Obviously, people are worried about Nathaniel Hackett, but let's be honest, this is Aaron Rodgers' offense anyways. And number 4, the Green Bay Packers. Yes, I'm putting them this high. Jordan Love is the best quarterback in the NFC. And when you have the best quarterback in the NFC, paired with Matt LaFleur and a defense that should be so much better because they don't have Joe freaking Barry and they have that dude from Boston College, Haley, I think, or Halfley, whatever his name is. This defense should perform much, much better. Plus, they have a stacked defensive line and Jair Alexander. Like, they have a lot of talent. And then you give Matt LaFleur an elite quarterback. Oh, yeah, this team is going to be really, really good. I do think there could be some struggles and hiccups along the way, but I do trust Jordan Love and this team to figure it out and be one of the best teams in the NFL and in the NFC. But that also means you got to go through Dan Campbell's Detroit Lions. Look, the culture that this team has established is by far the best in the NFL. All around the block, this team has so much talent. Offensive line, playmakers, coaching, defensive line, the secondary, they brought in some pieces to really help out. So if I had to put my life on one of these teams in the NFC to do the damn thing and get to the Super Bowl and even win the Super Bowl, it's going to be the Detroit Lions. Who would have guessed that the Detroit Lions are going to be a Super Bowl contending team? Well, when you have Dan Campbell, that's what's possible. And then the Houston Texans with C.J. Stroud. Wow, boy, he had such a great year, and they said, yes, this is our guy. While he's on the cheap rookie contract, let's go win. They brought in Stephon Diggs. They brought in Joe freaking Mixon. And then you throw on the defensive line, they even got like Danico Autry, who will miss some time, and Daniel Hunter. Like, this team really bought in on this season. The Texans defense is something I'm targeting in fantasy because, as I said, it takes about a year and a half for these elite defenses to kind of start getting there. So I think this Texans defense towards the middle of the season, end of the season, is going to become very, very scarily elite, especially now that they have more talent. D'Amico Ryans already had a top 3 DVOA everywhere he's been a coordinator of. So they're gonna defend the run. The pass rush should be better. Oh, and you have C.J. Stroud, who's probably like a top 5 quarterback already. And you have Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, 2 number 1 wide receivers. Tank Dell is one of the better slot wide receivers in the league. Joe Mixon, who is still a good running back. And Dalton Schultz is what, your sixth option, fifth option. Like, oh yeah, this team is freaking insane. So the Houston Texans, I have money on CJ Stroud to win the Super Bowl, to win the MVP. I have the money on the Texans to win the Super Bowl. I am buying into the Houston Texans. I'm from the Houston area. I'm not a Texans fan, but I'm from the Houston area. And boy, you can see the culture difference. You can feel the culture difference. The culture that CJ Stroud has brought in is so undeniable. So the Houston Texans are going to be a good team, and I do think they should have Super Bowl expectations. But at the end of the day, you got Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine chilling in Kansas City. Look, when you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, you're going to be the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Even in an off year, they still won the Super Bowl. So there's no way in hell I'm going to bet against Patrick Mahomes, where I think if he retired today, is probably already the greatest quarterback of all time. This defense is elite. Spagnuolo has been doing great with this defense for years, and this offense should only get better, bringing in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. So I just believe so much in this team. Roster everywhere, they have talent. And you have the best quarterback, and you have one of the best coaches. Like, unless Patrick Mahomes gets injured, the Chiefs should be the favorite and probably will still end up winning the Super Bowl. It's absolutely unprecedented, the absolute talent this team has. And Patrick Mahomes is probably already the greatest football player to ever exist. So I'm not going to bet against him until they give me a reason to actually do it. And so with that being said, that is our power rankings. Go ahead and let me know down below in the comments what you thought. Throw me a like, throw me a subscribe, and we'll see you on Thursday for the start of the NFL season. See ya.